returns to Lamu. The decision hands a lifeline to the moribund Kenyan port and fresh impetus to the regional Lapset project. That was what we had earlier as we had the East African publication having its headline. Is there any rhyme or reason why we're seeing also Abiy in the country right now? Is it because of the Lamu port? And I indicated earlier that we had also Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi in Ethiopia on the 22nd of February, where he signed key cooperation deals in 7 sectors on behalf of the government. And also, historically, a 60-year-old historical defense agreement we share with Ethiopia that is rooted in friendship between Jomo Kenyatta and Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie. So this latest visit signals improved also relations between Nairobi and Addis and offers a new opportunity to explore new avenues of collaboration in the region. Insiders say the agenda of the visit is an economic collaboration with a particular focus on Ethiopia. That is Ethiopia's strategic interest in utilizing Kenya's Lamu port for maritime access. Right, let's buckle down and discuss this particular latest development. Peter Kagwanja, what does it mean? First, looking at those pictures, that enthusiasm, that, you know, the greetings, that the way he was getting a very hearty welcome from William Ruto, what does it really portend?
Well,
there's sort of a camaraderie that we've never seen before.
The two leaders have one thing in common, a number of things actually in common. Obviously, they are evangelical Christians. Therefore, they are people who really, you know, would get to that extent. The second thing, of course, is that
the evangelicals, you say?
Yeah, they are evangelical Christians. Yes.
Oh, I thought Abiy is
no, Orthodox. No,
he's an Orthodox.
No.
Okay.
No, he's not.
No,
he's evangelical Christian.
Sorry?
Yeah,
he's a Pentecostal.
He's a Pentecostal.
Okay.
Yes. So he comes from those Christian right of faith. Anyway, that's one. The second thing is that both of them don't have a disdain for protocol, but they don't love it too much either.
They have a disdain, or they don't have?
I say they don't have a disdain for protocol because they are beholden to follow protocol, but they are not, you know, strict adherents of what you can call protocol. You remember William Ruto, you know, trying to lead the the military, and you know, the Fiji. That has been documented as one where, you know, there is a provost, there is a you know, provost or the leader, and then you want to read, and it was very nervous. Of course, that has been documented by many people. And those who knows William Ruto will tell you that the warmth of his heart sometimes go beyond the protocol, and therefore he'll hug when in essence you're supposed to just extend the hand, and so on and so forth. The same case with Abiy. Abiy is the kind of a person who would not want to travel alone in a plane. He would rather be the same plane with Ruto. They go chatting and discussing things. Protocol don't require that, because you're putting two countries at risk. If that plane is brought down, what does that mean for the two countries? You know, that kind of a thing is what Abiy is good at. Both are charismatic. They have the gift of the gab, if you wish. They win you over by just, you know, the talk. So they have a lot in common as true. But their countries have historically a lot in common, but now much in difference. Let me begin by the pact. The 1964 military pact between Kenya and Ethiopia, signed by Jomo Kenyatta.
No, before you go to the pact, I wanted just to, on a lighter note, still on
the umbrella,
the umbrellas, and the
umbrella and the rain,
yes, and the rain,
dancing the rain.
Okay, we also look at the age factor.
No, I know you like these things. You know, I could tell by the time you were talking, by the time you were raising that questions, you had this song, "Dancing in the Rain."
No, I didn't have any song. You are putting it in my mouth right now. I don't even know.
This is the kind of hugging in the rain. We need a new song, "Hugging in the Rain."
Looking at the age bracket, you see some youthfulness there as well.
Yeah. Sure.
Had it been another president, I think there wouldn't be that action and
with Museveni, you keep your distance.
Yes. You keep your distance.
Yes, completely. No this hugging.
Yeah.
You might bring the old man down.
Yeah.
With Kagame, you've got to be rigid and protocol matters.
Yep.
The Kagame, you know. With Hassan Sheikh, you can have a hand extended, but let's keep it at that. You know, we are comrades, but we don't have to jump at each other. Yeah. With Mama Suruhu, you keep your distance. Yeah. Mimi ni mama wa mtu. So there is no other environment. I mean, with the Salva Kiir, you know, you keep your distance. And in Sudan, maybe Hemedit, but this is a warrior from the wild, so I don't think he's familiar with those kind of hands. So what I was saying, it's unique. And I have explained to you that the dance in the rain, the hug in the rain is not just from nowhere, but both have so much in common in terms of personality.
Just hold on so that I rope in also Yusuf Hassan, because that particular gesture does not reflect the reality on the ground, does it? When you see a lot of frosted relations that has been happening, a lot is happening between Ethiopia and Kenya recently, and just as we've alluded to earlier, the pundits were saying that you see, when we had William Ruto now installing Uhuru Kenyatta as on that shuttle diplomacy to make sure that the region is at peace and is trying to broker peace around. When he did that by sending him to Ethiopia to try and stem the situation in Ethiopia, I think also he took special umbrage with that. It didn't really go down well with Abiy. This is what they're saying, because he felt he was not really consulted before that really happened. Could that be adding any, should I say, questions regarding Kenya and Ethiopia, diplomatic tiff?
Well, I think whatever problems there exist between the two countries, it is very clear that there is a special relationship, there's a chemistry between President Ruto and Prime Minister Abiy. And this is clearly demonstrated by the warmth, the camaraderie that you mentioned. They get along very well. And it showed. Abiy disrupted the neatly organized protocol system at the airport. He completely rearranged it by jumping out to embrace his brother, the president of Kenya. But I think if you look at President Uhuru Kenyatta's intervention in the case of Ethiopia, Ethiopia was at war. The African Union headquarters is in Addis, and nobody was able to speak or even bring sense to that madness that was happening in Ethiopia. Over nearly 1 million Tigrayans died in that conflict, and Ethiopia is used to be revered by other Africans. You know, a country that has not been colonized, the headquarters of African Union. African countries normally do not get involved in Ethiopia's problem. Even when we had the infamous famine of 1984, where millions of people were dying on the outskirts of Addis, the headquarters of the African Union, it was business as usual. Africans didn't raise their voice or even their concern, because Big Brother Ethiopia would not tolerate it. So it was quite a shock maybe to them that a neighboring African country's head of state was telling them what to do and what not to do, to say, look, it's not acceptable for this war to continue. You must reconcile. You must bring it to an end. And they didn't expect that role would be played by Uhuru Kenyatta. They expected Uhuru Kenyatta would agree, would side with them, regardless of what was happening in the region, in Tigray region. So I think that made a lot of difference. And the fact that he was mediating, going up and down, and saying this was not acceptable, violation of human rights was not acceptable, the war against civilians was not acceptable. I think they have not been used to that. They have been used to being supported in whatever they do, or for Africa to turn, to look away when things were really wrong in Ethiopia. But the Tigray crisis changed that, and Africa intervened, and the African at the head of that intervention happened to be President Uhuru Kenyatta, and I think that really didn't do much for our relationship. And I think this is an opportunity to kind of restart with the new president, with new ideas and new ways of working together.
Right, so now good opportunity to reset the relations, as it were. Let's hear from Naomi Damba.
Dubal, there is so much in that imagery that we just watch. And it is a very, very important diplomatic symbolism. Henry Kissinger had, who's done a lot in the international scene and shaped up American foreign policy, said there is not much you can do without chemistry. Okay, there is not much you can do. And if just cast it in a bigger way, look at the stand between Joe Biden and Putin right now. There's not much they can do when both of them get on the table. The Soviet Union had a big fight with America. But when Reagan came, Reagan was out to destroy the Soviet Union, just as Soviet Union wanted to destroy America. But Gorbachev and Reagan came together at Rakovich, and that was the shortest meeting and the most prominent and the most substantive meeting, because the chemistry came together. So there was no question of doubt, and what is said, what's your intention, what's my intention. And that moved the world forward. And for a period of time, there was a Nile in terms of conflict that we are seeing. So I like what I've just seen, because the world there is major issue evolving in this part of the world. Ethiopia insisted that they have to have access to the sea. It is important for the nation, but do they fiscally have to be at the sea? And so that is the question that is evolving that can also engulf the Horn of Africa, including Kenya in this point. So who is going to be able to get Abiy to back off, okay, from the brink and say, now let us look at it in a different way? Ethiopia get what they want.
Right, but before you even go to that particular maritime dispute, I wanted just to go back to the history that you're talking about. If you maybe the history of Kenya and Ethiopia in the 60s with Mzee Jomo Kenyatta as well.
As my two colleagues have indicated, Kenya's had a special relationship with Ethiopia, from Jomo Kenyatta to Emperor Haile Selassie. There was chemistry. Kenya was, and Haile Selassie and Kenyatta had a bond. And from that time, remember, the first students coming out of Kenya went to Ethiopia, for training. Ethiopia was this special place that was never colonized and everything. Then after that, there's been a lot of relationship building in between. Ethiopia's gone through a lot of problems since the emperor died. But in every case, Kenya continued to try to have a clear relationship with Ethiopia. Now, let's talk about the Renaissance Dam. Kenya has already benefited out of Renaissance Dam. We are taking power out of it. And so we also supported Ethiopia almost against Egypt when it comes to Renaissance Dam. But we have a huge trading partnership with Egypt that's going on. But nevertheless, we took a fairly good stand in where we are as far as the African interest is concerned. And so Ethiopia is a pivotal area because the headquarters of African Unity is in Ethiopia. And there is also a potential for the entire East Africa. Now we are a 7th state. So we're just waiting for Ethiopia to join in. We will be over 300 million people in this zone. We will be one of the most powerful bloc within African system. So this relationship is critical to Kenya as much as it is critical to Ethiopia.
Right. Kagonja, I'd interrupted you.
Yes, you did interrupt me, and my aim that time was to locate this debate within the Raja historical terrain with a view to showing the tectonic shifts that we are beginning to witness in Kenya-Ethiopia relations, and which, despite the hag in the rain, is still, is concealing a lot of undercurrents of the differences between the two countries, which are fairly recent. They're not ancient. Obviously, we must underscore the fact that it is the shared fear of the militarism of Somalia in the 60s that brought the two together. Obviously, it helped the fact that Kenyatta and Haile Selassie had spent a number of years together in London during the war and during the time of Italian occupation of Ethiopia. The two factors, of course, culminated in what we have called a military pact, which never went beyond the military pact. It never went to the economic sector. It did go into the diplomatic sector because, as a Kenyan, you just need to walk into Ethiopia and vice versa. You don't need a visa, and that has obtained for over 54. I mean, that obtained for over 54 years of the pact. Now, within the academy and diplomatic circles, this pact was based on what Abiy would like to call the Abyssinian part of the Ethiopian equation, and the Oromo were not part of that pact, and therefore what would happen is that upon coming to power, this pact was just in the paper. It was no longer, the spirit that brought it was not there. Obviously, after 1991, Somalia had also shifted. The collapse of the Somali state under Siad Barre and the events, the civil war that ensued, meant that Somalia was no longer a military threat to either Ethiopia or Kenya. And then the pact was basically moribund. So, within that broader context, then a number of things changed. Mele Zenawi and his team were in Addis Ababa, and they looked to Ramu Port as a way of entering the Indian Ocean. And for them, that was the surest way and the best way and the safest way, because it is through a stable economy, which is Kenya. When Abiy came in, Ramu Port was no longer important for a long time, and therefore he went on to sign deals with all the heads of Somali states for the ports to the Indian Ocean. So he has five agreements. Yes, Ethiopia has 5 agreements with the various states, from Puntland to Garmadug to Hirushebere and all that. So he has ports and has access to the Indian Ocean. And finally, he had 19% of the stakes in the port of Berbera. And therefore, Ramu was really not so important. under Abiy. So the rediscovery of Ramu is something new, and it is worrying for many of us, to be honest, because it is coached now on a very different ideological plane from what it was. Abiy, Mele Zenawi and his predecessors saw in Kenya. For Abiy, it is a larger game plan to cast the Oromia state that spreads from a far region in the Red Sea to to Ramu. So this is a reborn imperial agenda, and therefore the port of Ramu is not a port that is just for access to the Indian Ocean for trade and so on. It has a larger geostrategic purpose, and for Abiy, he does not see Kenya as you see it now. He sees the Oromia, the Oromo territory, or the Oromo-speaking territory. Everyone who speaks Oromia is in this area, from the Orma of Tana River to the Oromo of Ethiopia next to Addis Ababa. That's the future. And what does that mean? It means recasting the old Cushitic Empire. So when he's going to Somalia, Somalia is, as I've said before, is inconsequential. This treaty with Somaliland is inconsequential. What is consequential is basically taking the area of Eritrea that links Ethiopia to the Red Sea, and taking the port of Ramu, which links Ethiopia to the Indian Ocean. And that now recreates the old Cushitic Empire. And the old Cushitic Empire, if you remember, is the empire that took Queen of Sheba to Solomon. That's where he was saying, when you talk about the land of Cush, this is it. And that rediscovery of the empire is not unique to Ethiopia. Other countries are trying to recreate their old empires. The Turkish are trying to recreate the Ottoman Empire, which stretched from the north all the way up to Somalia, and at one point the port of Mombasa. Now, when you look at the Al-Shabaab and the Islamic extremists, what are they trying to recreate? The empires of Said, all that goes to the belly of Congo, and that's why you see Al-Shabaab are in Mozambique, they are in Congo, and they are in other areas, because that's the caliphate is what they are trying to recreate. Look at the Russians and the fights that we are fighting in Ukraine. It is trying to assert the old territories that belong to yourself. So history has become so important in creating the past and the future and imagining the future. And in this imagination of the future, Lamu is not just a port, what you are calling Lapset. It's no longer a port. There is a huge imperial agenda here, which I'm not sure everybody is aware of. But when you begin to read some of the literature that is coming out now, those who care to read about the Horn, then Kenya has more to be worried about than it is today.
Right. All right. I think we, unless Mudama, you wanted to add something on that on Ethiopia, we can.
Well, what is important is that, and I'm now talking about Kenya. There's a leftover issue between Kenya and Somalia regarding the maritime issue that need to be solved. Because here, like Kagwanja just said, Turkey has interest, Chinese has interest, Americans have interest, and one way or another, if Ethiopia happened to go by force, which, Lord behold, we don't happen to, the chaotic scene in this region will seriously impact Kenya, because Turkey has the biggest embassy in Somalia right now. Turkey then have signed a deal to have to enforce basically the maritime interest of Somalia. What about China? What about America? What's going to happen here? So we need to settle. Kenya need to settle the issue.
All right, we need to move to Somalia right now, even as we're talking about Ethiopia, because the Somalia recent deal with Turkey has raised the stakes in a simmering maritime dispute with Ethiopia. And experts say it could escalate existing conflict in the Horn of Africa. That is, in the Horn of Africa, Turkey and Somalia last week signed a significant defense and economic cooperation agreement under the 10-year pact. Turkey will help defend Somalia, or Somalia's long coastline, and also rebuild the wall, rebuild the naval forces of the fragile Horn of Africa nation. The Somali government hopes the deal will strengthen its ability to combat threats like piracy and terrorism, but also, more pointedly, foreign interference. And this is what we want to discuss right now, which segues very well with Ethiopia's Abiy's visit here and the Somaliland dispute that is ongoing. What does this? We have people raising concerns. And we know this, it's not new. We've had Turkey having their base in Somalia since was it in 2000?
No, 17.
Since 2017. I think one of the largest in Africa so far.
Yes.
But what does this now mean when we have such pacts being signed, like officially?
Well, I think the relationship between Turkey and Somalia is the strongest and has been the strongest. Only Turkey has this immunity, even from terrorists, so that the Turkish airlines have been going in and out of Mogadishu since 2017. And, Turkey, as has been indicated, has the largest military base in Somalia. And the largest, I think, on the continent is in Somalia. And currently, I think, if Somalia is not in the Middle East, meaning Qatar or UAE, where they are settled, then they are settled in Turkey. Turkey is Istanbul, particularly, is more of another Mogadishu. There are very, very many Somalis, and it means Somalis from Somalia, from Somaliland to Kenya, and the diaspora. And therefore there is more than just the military pact. But the military pact adds something. It is a bold statement, particular to Ethiopia, that Turkey is ready to defend Somalia and its boundary, or rather to put at the disposal of Somalia its military capacity to defend its borders. That is the bold statement, because as we have said, the military pact between the two countries has already been there. Remember, the war against Al-Shabaab, the recent onslaught against Al-Shabaab, is born on the wings of the Turkish technology, particularly the drones from Turkey that are known to be very lethal. And therefore, whereas the Americans would be bombing all the way from Missouri to the Al-Shabaab, dens in Somalia, the Turkish are in there with their drones, basically, supporting the government campaign. And therefore, the military or the security, engagement between the two countries is not new. What is new is this pronouncement that with this pact, we are now ready to defend the territorial boundaries of Somalia, and that goes in to consolidate the relationship between the two countries. Why is it important? Because the countries that are supporting Ethiopia in the Gulf are also on the other side of Turkey. In other words, we are beginning to see the spillover effect of that. I think one broad statement that can be made in regard to that security pact is that we are beginning to see the increasing militarization of the Horn. You do know that Somalia has signed military pacts with Egypt, has military pacts with other countries, the region, and therefore we are beginning to see the militarization of the region. When you move to the other side of Djibouti. The port of Djibouti has everybody in the Horn. Every country, from China to America, France to Britain, and so on, they all have military bases in Djibouti. Now, moving north, the port of Assab has been a major, zone for the deployment of drones from the UAE, United Arab Emirates. And the war in Tigray was actually fought from there in terms of the modern technology. So Assab and it also signifies the increasing militarization of the region. And this is what has awoken Abiy, because he discovered that future wars is not about territory. It's about control of the port where you wage war, and the discovery of the Navy now as the emerging backbone of an effective military. And therefore the quest for a port, not for trade, but for a naval, as a naval base, has become extremely important at this juncture. With the port of Assab, Ethiopia was able to destroy one of the largest militaries in the north. By the time the wars broke out in November 2020 in Tigray, Tigray controlled 2/3 of the Ethiopian military capacity, including the Air Force and so on. But it was destroyed within 2 weeks. And a war that would have conventionally continued for months, perhaps years, was transformed into guerrilla war within a period of 2 weeks because of the port of Assab. So these military pacts are complex, but they are also increasingly militarizing the Horn of Africa. And the Somali pact with both Turkey and Egypt is an indication of this militarization of the Horn.
Yusuf Hassan.
Well, I think it is interesting to see that new forces, new partnerships, military partnerships are happening in the Horn of Africa. It clearly shows the decline of the major powers. For example, the United States does not hold fort as the big power in this region. You have Turkey, you have the United Arab Emirates, you have the Saudis in the background, you have Qatar. There are many powers, little powers, emerging powers in the region that are playing big on the Horn of Africa. And they appear to be having relationship with both countries. Turkey enjoys a very good relationship with Ethiopia. It provided the drones that helped Abiy defeat the Tigrayan rebellion. The United Arab Emirates is there. Saudi Arabia is there. But at the same time, they're on this side, on the Somali side. And Turkey, to a certain extent, has taken advantage of the problems between the two countries to assert its naval presence in the Somali Indian Ocean coastline. But I think what is important is for Ethiopia to reconsider its position, because I think it is really a tall order for Ethiopia to be able to gain naval power in the Horn of Africa. It is almost impossible. First of all, it would require going to war with a neighboring country, either Somalia or with Eritrea. And it's not an adventure that Ethiopia can afford at this particular moment. The second element is also that previously Ethiopia was seen as the anchor for international law, Africa Union rules, because it is the headquarters of the Africa Union. It is Ethiopia that has always protected itself by claiming sovereignty, territorial integrity, and respect for colonial borders. It has been their mantra. Now to come around and say it doesn't really matter, because we can grab the territory or the land of a neighboring country, has put them in an odd position, because they're globally isolated at the moment. If you hear all the pronouncement from the African Union, from IGAD, from the Arab League, from the European Union to the United Nations, including superpowers like the United States, China, Britain, every country in the world has clearly said that the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of Somalia must be respected. And no country has supported Ethiopia's land grab to say, we're going to the sea. And it has also complicated the politics of Somaliland, which was doing relatively well. There's a lot of squabblings, a lot of concerns about whether this is the right decision for them. So I think it is not a viable project as far as I'm concerned. Ethiopia now needs maybe a face-saving initiative to extract them from this particular crisis. And maybe, who knows, this visit to Kenya, to Nairobi, may provide the bridge that it needs to get out of that messy situation that it has found itself in.
Right. So just looking at the approval of the cabinet and saying this is that is the Somali cabinet, and saying this is very key for maritime security and trade issues. One will wonder, why is it very providential in what is currently happening, especially with the Somaliland issue? Because now you have maritime security. Does it mean also deployment of the Turkish naval in case of any dispute, that they will be on the ground as well? Has this also largely informed this particular solemnization of this agreement, so to speak? Because we see it as a solemnizing and solidifying what has been there since 2017.
I think Yusuf Sanders mentioned a very important word here. Abiy needs room to retreat from the brink of war. Because if another war break out between, say, Somali and Ethiopia, we're looking at a serious catastrophe within Ethiopia itself, and there is a lot of implication. We all have mentioned who is involved, how many servicemen that are placed in this area. This area can go off like a oil full of tank, burn, and it will affect the entire Africa continent, including Kenya, because we still have maritime issue with Somalia, which we need to solve. And also, don't forget that Kenyans and other Africans went to Somalia and died in order to help Somalia become a stable government. And Kenya was right in the forefront to support Somalia in terms of independence, of their international relations and everything. And we're doing booming business between Somalia and Kenya right now. It is difficult. And then Kenya was on the forefront to also accept Somalia as part of the East Africa community, with the idea that we'll be able to solve our problem within the East African framework. So Abiy and the relationship with President Ruto is critical, because Abiy has to be persuaded on a safely basis to back off from a fight, because this fight will not solve the best interest of Ethiopia, the best interest of any country within this region. And therefore, if there is amicable understanding and then agree that Somalia state has to move toward joining together and become a nation state, not split into three states like a potential right now. And so this is the kind of politics, the kind of diplomacy that need to be in the forefront of the East Africa community, of our president and also President Abiy.
Right, thank you.
Maybe I can add something there very quickly.
Then we'll bring it to a close.
Yes,
So,
yes. Let me put it this way, that in a short while, or at the end of this year, the African Transition Mission in Somalia, ATMIS, is supposed to withdraw. And the risk of the country, Somalia, falling to the Al-Shabaab, at the same time when Ethiopia has its own expansionist agenda in Somalia, is a real threat to Ethiopian, Somalia's sovereignty. And because of that, we have witnessed 6 pacts of military. You have just mentioned the Turkish, the Turkish-Somalia, security pact. We have 6 more, those 6 which have occurred within the last 2 months, so to say. The first one was with the UAE. There's a pact now with the UAE that has been signed. Then we have the United States have now a new agreement to build naval bases in Somalia. You've mentioned the Turkey-Somalia pact. We have now a new arrangement, military arrangement with Uganda. The president of Somalia was in Uganda. Remember, Uganda has deployed the largest contingent of the ATMIS forces in Somalia. And we have the security, MOU with Egypt, between Mogadishu and Egypt. And finally, I think the visit to Kenya is, in a sense, the revitalization of the relationship between Kenya and Somalia that we are going to see very soon. And therefore, Abiy coming to Kenya would be more or less a response to this. What is Kenya's position on this? And inversely, Somalia would want to win Kenya over into his support. Now, that is what we're calling the militarization of the Horn, because the threat to Somalia's sovereignty is real, particularly with the exit of the African Union forces in the country. So we just needed to add that footnote for our broad understanding.
Thank you. And I wanted to just ask, because as we can see it here, we have Somalia seeking a smaller mission, a success of the African Union force to protect the people as the local army takes charge. This was bound to happen. It's been in the writing on the wall, as you just indicated. But what will a smaller mission look like? It seems there is a huge gap that, as we have ATMIS exiting, a smaller mission, we have the East African standby force. How are these critical areas also helping, Somali, or these missions around help Somali?
Well, what I had said earlier build into this, the ATMIS. Now, and the imagination of the post-ATMIS future of Somalia itself is scary for Somalia's neighbors, particularly Kenya and Djibouti. Those two are more worried. And it is also scary for the leadership of Somalia.
Yes.
Moving into the future. And therefore, there are several things. One, Somalia joining the East African community was basically a boon. It was a boon because within the framework of the East African community, the Burundian forces and the Ugandan forces and the Kenyan forces in Somalia can continue to protect and give support to the government. Not within the African Union framework, but within the East African community framework. And that has already happened in Congo, despite the complexity of the Congo situation. But in Somalia, it's easier. So it simply means that even when ATMIS pull out, the new troops on the ground don't pull out. The Ugandans will be there. I have talked about the pact between Somalia and Uganda. It means that the Djiboutian forces stay put. It means the Kenyan forces stay put. So the problem now will be the Ethiopian forces. And the Ethiopian forces can easily be replaced by the Turkish forces. They can also be replaced by other friendly forces, for example, support by drones from UAE in the framework of the new pact. And therefore, the possibility of a military vacuum coming in is not there. Remember also, there has been a titanic, what you can call a major shift in Somalia, which has gone unnoticed. The United Nations have lifted its arms embargo over Somalia. Therefore, the parity that was there between the government in Mogadishu and the Al-Shabaab in Jibril are over. Now, they are over because the government now has an edge. It can acquire all manner of military capacity to deal with the threat from Al-Shabaab and any other forces within the country. And therefore, although we talked about militarization of the Horn, it's now beginning to become more certain that Somalia can hold together after the exit of the Africa transitional nation in Somalia.
All right. Let's move on to Benin now, where Benin has offered 2,000 troops to support a planned Kenyan-led international force to help Haitian National Police fight armed gangs. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, told a press conference on Monday the United Nations authorized the mission in October, a year after Haiti's unelected government requested it. The UN estimates the conflict in the Caribbean nation killed close to 5,000 people last year and has driven some 300,000 from their homes. Thomas Greenfield, speaking in Guyana, where she traveled to lead the U.S. delegation to the Caribbean Community, that is CARICOM Summit, said she had learned just before starting the trip that Benin had offered the troops to support the force. She said some Caribbean countries that had pledged support had called for more Francophone nations to join the effort. A U.S. statement issued on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro last week had announced financial, personnel, and in-kind commitment to the mission from Benin, France, and Canada. The latter, which later announced 80.5 million Canadian dollars for the mission. Kenya, which has pledged to lead the mission, offered 1,000 police officers. The High Court later barred the move as unconstitutional. President William Ruto has, however, said the plan will go ahead, and meetings have since continued. Let's just discuss this latest development. I think this is the second African nation right now to now support Kenya's mission in Haiti. Yusuf, what's your reaction?
Well, my take is that this is a very important development given the special relationship, historical relationship between Haiti and Benin. I think many people don't know that Santo Domingo, which is the name of the old Haiti, the majority of the Africans who are settled there by the various colonial imperial forces, the Spanish, the Portuguese, and the French, were from Benin. The Beninois culture and religion is the dominant. The voodoo culture of Haiti is based on their origins from their ancestral home of West Africa, and more specifically Benin. So I think for a West African country which is French-speaking to come out and say they were sending 2,000 troops to Haiti, Haiti is very important, and I think it changes the perspective that many people have, that in fact there wasn't any other African country that has volunteered to support the stabilization of Haiti other than Kenya. And I think this would open up the field for more countries. I mean, there are many Caribbean countries who've said they're willing to contribute forces, but they don't have the capacity. So I think this would shift the goalpost to allow perhaps a more substantial African Caribbean military and police forces to be able to be assembled and sent to Haiti, because Haiti's situation is really dire. The law and order situation has collapsed. The state is no longer able to manage the situation, and a lot of ordinary people, women and children, are suffering. much of the country is in the hands of kind of marauding gangs whose intention is to exploit the population and cause more suffering. They're not providing an alternative. So I think it is important for Africa, for the Caribbean countries to quickly act to save Haiti from itself, if one would say that.
Right. Professor Kagwanja?
I think the link that Mheshimiwa Yusuf has drawn between Benin and Haiti is very, very important. And Benin is by far better equipped ideologically and culturally to deal with Haiti than the Kenyan police force, because the Benoit understands better what is happening in Haiti in regard to the cultural and other dynamics. And therefore, 2020 troops is critical. More importantly, remember, they are taking the military, not the police force. So the military can overpower gangs. Police force is very unlikely to overpower gangs in a situation where the central authority has collapsed, where the government is itself a sitting duck, as it is now in Haiti. And therefore, although we are really talking about an African state deploying in Haiti, this is a totally different African state. It's like if you take Burkina Faso, or you take Benin, or these countries in the Guinea, the area of the Guinea coast there. That's where most of the Haitian came from. And remember, these are from the Francophonie. Benin speak French. Haiti speaks French. The Haitians speak French. And therefore, there is again some relevance to this if you compare it with Kenya. Kenyans, very few Kenyans speak French, more so in our forces, whether it's a police force or the security forces. Very few speak French. So the Benin will be at home with their brother, with the kith and kin in Haiti. So this is a very relevant kind of deployment. Way better than deploying the Americans that they have tried to do in the past.
What do you think is informing them deploying a military as opposed to, a police force, so to speak?
It's logical. I mean, when a state has collapsed, you don't deploy police officers. Police officers are described in plain English language, picked straight from Oxford Dictionary, as law enforcers. You don't enforce law where the authority has collapsed. As we speak now, the Prime Minister, who is acting president, is a sitting duck. One is not really sure whether we are going to reach the middle of this year with him in power.
Right.
So the deployment of the Haitian military means that there are going to be fewer casualties in regard to the war.
All right. So if there is no law and order, then why is the Kenya police going there to enforce law and order where there's none in the first place?
That's the problem we had, because nobody would have would have had this debate if we were deploying the KDF. If KDF was going at the behest of the United Nations, who would talk? We are in South Sudan. We've sent our experts to Darfur. We've sent our experts to Congo. We are in Somalia. Almost over 3,000 of our troops are in Somalia. And who is having that debate? So the debate is coming from the fact that we are exposing Kenyan lives, and that we're going to see more body bags than the amount of resources we are getting from the United States. And that brings out a very, very serious debate that is emerging in the world. The value of African life. Because most of these other countries are refusing to deploy in war zones, instead increasing their technological involvement rather than the human rights. Because countries have started defending their citizens, except our countries, who don't take serious, cognizance of the fact that African lives also matter. So deploying officers who, we have seen physically how difficult it has been for us to to contain our northern zone in Kainuk, in
So we can say
in Sukuta Valley. And we are not talking about gangs, the kind you have in Haiti, who controls all the manner of ammunition. We are talking about our own cattle rustlers. It has been very difficult to basically subdue them. How are you going to subdue people who are conversing in French, you don't understand French, in a new territory you have never been to?
The cattle rustler menace here,
yes.
One of the MCAs has died so far.
Yes.
Yeah, let me just hear from Noah Midamba, because as you say, right now we even have one of the police officer who died in a very unclear circumstances in the United States. And I think he's part of this deployment in Haiti, right? So was this strategy wrong-headed if we can see Haiti deploying the military? We go with our police force. Is it wrong-headed from the word go?
Dubal helping, and in this case can be redeploying Kenyans, and in other words, they get paid and then the money returned to the country. That's one thing. The other is a missionary. It is human responsibility that we need to go there and help this country.
But what money?
Now, here's my issue. And Kagwanja just
You're talking about money. People have been questioning this amount of money. That,
oh, yes.
Yeah.
Here's my issue. My issue with that policeman is Ukraine and Russia right now. The new commanding general in Ukraine has said we're going to have a strategic retreat out of what called meat grinder. That place, that edge they just moved from was a meat grinder. And Putin is willing to put as many soldiers to die. And therefore, the issue, the technology right now is to be able to save human life, whether you send them to fight. And just sending police to fight against a zone which is known as a meat grinder. That's what is known. Americans have tried it, Canadians have tried it, all others have tried, they moved out. And so this combination is now beginning to make the most sense. But my point is, how many Benins are going to be sent there to fight? Because you need an overwhelming force. That's military force that Colonel Powell called warriors. Okay? Then the police then will then help to settle peace, police force. Then that combination will begin to make sense. But the way we conceptualize it and the way we were sending our young men and women, it was to a meat grinder. And I've been hesitant, very, very clear, very opposed to it right from the beginning.
All right. So we've deployed our own to a meat grinder.
Yes.